Welcome back, dear friends, to my channel for Sew and Let Go. And I want to apologize for being absent for the last week or almost 2 weeks. I really got busy in my own studies, and I am only going to ever promise that this is a hobby for me. And so I also, for lack of a better word, lost interest in the knitting piece as far as putting it out there in the YouTube world. I feel a little bit more comfortable and confident staying with the practice of sewing and inspiring, hopefully, you in there and coming together in thought. And so I think that might make some of you really happy, because while I do think that knitting is something that is really engaging, therapeutic, rhythmic, meditative, it is something that I think there's plenty of other people that can show you how and provide opportunities for projects. So I think I'm going to go back to this. And I used to say with my students who were picking out books, give it a good hard try, but of course you can abandon it. So I'm going to abandon that part. And we're going to focus a lot on the slow stitch, which just means that we're going to be sewing by hand. We're going to be working through some things. So I introduced this monthly project, I guess, but really a structure that provides an opportunity for me to just have a space for doing a little bit of sewing without having to worry about the creation of a project. Whether this becomes a scarf or whatever it is, just to review, I have sewn 12 little swatches and kind of a color pattern of this lovely kind of what I call a country blue, and then this more beigeish color. So back and forth all the way through, so that I start and end with this color and have some of these sprinkled in. Today is towards the last week of February. It's all right. It will get done. But that's why I selected some bright things, because that's just where I am right now. And so this is kind of one of the things we're going to touch into when we get into March, and we'll get back into stitching again. I've got some exciting things that I really am looking forward to and motivated to share with you, and hopefully it'll be fun. Now, this doesn't necessarily need to be a project. I hope that I can promise that whatever I do share in these videos are going to be things that require you to have just some simple tools or use up some fabric from clothes that you have. Now, I did purchase these, but in seeing the set, I can tell that these are just not coming from Joann's, and there's nothing wrong with that. But again, this is just something that I have made a promise to myself to be more committed to purchasing less and using more of what I have already. And so anyway, this whole set is really interesting and unique and different textures. So I'm going to use that. And that's where I got these color choices on here. And so you can't necessarily see or appreciate the feel of it. But, oops. Oh, that's right. I glued a little bit of that on in some spaces. But this is kind of thicker and a little bit textured. You can kind of maybe hear that. I don't know. It might sound like that. This is really thin. And I did kind of tack it down with a little pieces of glue here and there, and then left some pins in there. And then I'm going to sew with that. So this is a lot of setup, and then we'll get to the sewing. But for today, I was going to, introduce that and then talk a little bit through some of the color choices, because I think that's one of the things I want to talk about next month. So this is kind of like a little bit of a preview. But when selecting this, I find I don't always default to just using some of the colors that are already on these pieces. Like, I don't actually even have a red in this particular set that I have, but I wouldn't probably use it anyway. I kind of like to pick up on the subtle colors or use colors that aren't even there. So for this particular piece, I think I'm going to work with 3 colors that are a color I've not used, because I think it'd be a really contrast. I might use it in here in some way. And then I did use blue of this blue, I think a little bit here. It gets lost in that color. But again, there's some purples, greens. This is kind of a green blue, but I really like this color. And then I hadn't done much with yellow. It was a little bit over here. But I really kind of like yellow, maybe in this. I love red and yellow together. And so I'll also probably do a video just about color. And I've been learning about color theory as I've started watercoloring. And so I see that beginning to help me develop my sense of color interest. So we'll put that away. And I think for today, I'm actually going to focus on this blue, and I'm just going to do this little piece right here. All right, then I've threaded my needle, and the only thing I'm going to say is I've learned about myself that I like a single strand, even though I make it long enough to double. And just as I go through, if I get this end, both these ends coming kind of close together towards my fabric, then I'll just kind of tug at the needle until it advances some of that thread, and then it just kind of extends it a little bit longer. I like that for that reason. It takes, less time adding new thread, and I actually just like the single strand, but that's not for everyone. And that's kind of the message. So a lot of that was the setup, and what's the message for today? And I'm gonna zigzag along here, and then as I pick this back up and maybe bring into next month's videos a little bit, you'll see how I'm progressing, and I might introduce some different stitches. But for today, I just want to get back. I just want to get back into the slow stitching, and I might even start over here so I can sew. So hopefully you've come to expect some readings or I'm hoping that you'll be inspired by some of the things that I read or quote or we have on our little chats. And today I wanted to go back to Brené Brown's book, Atlas of the Heart, because I was reading the part about comparison, and I'm going to share a quote as I'm getting us started in here. And I'm just going to go to the edge and go zigzag. I'm not going to get into this, just so you know. That's intentional. Comparison is the crush of conformity from one side and competition from the other. It's trying to simultaneously fit in and stand out. Comparison says, be like everyone else, but better. And I think I have been feeling that a lot lately. Have any of you heard much of the imposter syndrome? I had heard of it before. I have experienced it before, but not to the same degree as I have been lately. Sometimes I think we get into a rut, or we see others so much and compare ourselves to them so much. And I think part of this channel, though it's a hobby, I do want to do a good job with it. And I love to watch tutorials, and then I kind of judge myself. I kind of compare myself to them. And I'm wondering, what other ways do we engage in that in our lives that isn't necessarily serving us or supporting a positive self-image or a positive view and sense of accomplishment in life? And so I hope that as we engage with some of these sewing projects and processes, really, that we hold each other accountable for our very own uniqueness and our own way of doing things. And I think that's a little bit of what I was feeling whenever I was working through the knitting. There's so many different ways. And honestly, I actually do knitting in the Portuguese style, which I don't know of anybody else who does that except for my daughter, because I taught her how, and it's easier on our hands and our wrists. And so knowing that there's so many other people who can do it better sometimes is a little bit freezing up. But if you find yourself wondering if others are better than you, or wondering if the way you do things is the right way, then yes, it often is, because it's your spin on it. It's what you want to do. I read somewhere, and I know it was a quote by Jamila Reddy, but I'm not quoting her. I guess it's going to be something like a paraphrase, because she was writing about not letting the fact that someone else already had an idea that you did, and so this idea that we can't do it if somebody already has done that thing. So if somebody's already written a book about something, or if someone's already done a research study, or if someone's done anything else, and suddenly we realize that, oh, it wasn't necessarily our original idea, do we not do the thing? Or do we recognize their contribution and then we go ahead and take it and do our own spin on it? Because I feel like, as with teaching, I could teach the same thing to two different students and they would each pick up different things because of the way that I taught it, my personality, but some of the decisions that I made that maybe another teacher wouldn't make. And maybe they both would learn. Sometimes maybe they wouldn't, even if I have the best of intentions and I know, just how they learn. It might not be possible, to be effective in that way. And so if you find yourself comparing what you do or your ideas to someone else, and that causes you to feel like it's already been done and maybe it's not something you could do, I hope you pause and consider that idea, that comparison is kind of that tension between conformity and competition. And I would say, our own identity. And sometimes giving up our own unique identity just isn't worth the cost of conformity or winning or being the one that does the best thing, especially if we aren't doing it in an authentic way. So some of you have said that you would prefer that I not have music, and I'm going to try it this time. But it's also something that I think is soothing, and I've made it quieter in the last few videos, and it is a bit of my own self-expression. And so I'm hesitant to completely remove it because of a few comments from those of you who are watching. But again, the main point is to find this practice meditative and relaxing. And if the music is getting in the way, then that's a great reason to eliminate it if the rest of you feel that way as well. All right, well, that's where I'm going to stop. This is kind of how that's looking, and it's good to be back. Hopefully everyone's doing okay, and I'll be seeing you next month a little bit more on Sew and Let Go.